No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken episode number 309. And today, sad day for so many of us as we say a final farewell to the broadcasting legend and the British inventor of talk radio, James Whale, who you will know died after a valiant battle with cancer last month. So just to be totally transparent with you, I am attending the funeral this afternoon, and today's Outspoken has been recorded this morning. So on tomorrow's show, I'll share my recollections with you about what I'm sure has been a very poignant goodbye, bringing together so many legends of broadcasting, entertainment, and politics. But given that upsetting start, if you forgive me, let's start with something a little bit uplifting before we get to today's news, because on Saturday, it was such a joy to see my very good friend, the fellow independent broadcaster, Maya Tusi, an original of this genre, get married in a glorious traditional Latin Catholic service at the London Oratory to his gorgeous wife, Chief Operating Officer of 2C TV, Daniel Terry, but as of today, as they are on their honeymoon in Florida, Daniel 2C. And I have to say, it was just a perfect day. Lots of friends were there. Tommy Robinson, Stephen Barrett, Andre Walker, the voice of Wales, Nigel Evans, even Benjamin Butterworth, who I can tell you did come face to face with Tommy at one point, which was quite something. I was sort of like, oh my goodness, is this going to be a case of fisticuffs? Because just a couple of weeks ago, after Benjamin and I had gone at it on stage at the 2CTV New Media Conference, Tommy had said a whole load of terrible things about Benjamin, but no, it was actually very polite and fine. And of course, we'd all had more than a few drinks. And look at that. Isn't it just amazing? They even had the horse and the carriage. And I have to say, Danielle just looked like a Disney fairy tale princess. There was a string quartet. There was the most incredible piano players from the two guys who are behind the music and the entertainment at the Players Club, which is Maya's favourite in central London. Look at the venue, which was at the Lansdowne Club, just absolutely stunning. And then the first dance, where I have to say Maya surprised me actually with his moves. And I did talk to him about that when he went live on 2CTV to share some memories of the day with his viewers.
Everyone else, we're preparing the dance floor. They're all outside smoking for now. We just finished dinner, and we have a lot of special guests with us. We have Howard Cox, a former London mayoral candidate. We have Nigel Evans, the former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons. We got Stephen, or as we call him, Tommy Robinson, the troublemaker. Tommy, we have Niak Orban, we have my favourite lefty, Benjamin Butterworth.
Are you lying?
This is how much the best chap. We got Dan Wootton. Hi, Dan.
Is this the Maya 2C TV?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
You gotta pay for the wedding.
It has been the most incredible wedding. Beautiful,
How was
beautiful
the
day. Oh my God, it was absolutely stunning. Feel so privileged to be here. And Maya can really dance.
Oh,
It was an incredible first dance, like serious moves. Serious moves.
Are you jealous?
Yeah, I cannot dance like that.
I mean, I was just...
Our next dance is together.
The shock for me was to learn that you're straight. I mean, I thought this was Maya and Daniel's wedding. That's the... Turning out it's not gay was the shock of the day.
I am straight, and I proved it tonight.
Oh my God. So look, a right-wing wedding and a right-wing funeral to start the week. But now to the news. And breaking today, growing international concern about the UK's new Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood being a true enemy of British values.
You know, the people that you see holding the English flag most of the time, down my neck of the woods, will be the EDL, and they are white and they are male and they're bad people and they want to divide our community.
As over 1,000 arrived on her first day in the Home Office, I'll reveal why we should be very concerned about the hard left extremist now in charge of the United Kingdom's borders in my digest next. Then, making his Outspoken debut, I am delighted to have the black belt barrister Daniel ShenSmith with me for the entire programme. Also coming up on the show today, Nigel Farage says he will quit GB News as Sly News and the MSM pressure him over his perfectly legal tax arrangements as a Boris Johnson-sized feud, you might say, breaks out within Reform UK. Lucy Connolly's appearance at the party conference divides the right, we will debate. And after just 2 months, Reform rival Ben Habib's Advance UK hits its 30,000 membership target after prominent support from Elon Musk and Tommy Robinson. But why is the MSM, including GB News and Talk TV, ignoring this insurgent force? Then, in the Uncancelled Aftershow on Substack, Prince Harry's shot threat to his brother William as he returns to the UK for a head-to-head showdown. We're going to have all the latest with our Royal Mastermind Angela Levin. You can sign up to watch at www.outspoken.live. Now, as you know, we are not live today because of James Whale's funeral, so Greatest Britain and Union Jackass is just going to hold off. We will be back with it tomorrow, but please do let me know your nominees. I've already had some great ones, and we will kick that off for the week when we return live tomorrow. But now, let's go. The UK is in a crisis. A national emergency plays out every day, which the MSM and political class choose to ignore, as a colossal 1,000 illegals, many of whom are terrorists, murderers, and rapists, flood the country in just a day in an invasion that shames this government. Even the left-wing New Statesman now talks about entering the age of deportations. But in yet another betrayal of our country, the decision to parachute left-wing Muslim extremist lawyer Shabana Mahmood into the Home Office as Home Secretary proves the government's talk of stopping the boats and finally taking back control of our borders is just that. Indeed, there are now very real fears. Mahmood is actually part of Slippery Starmer's globalist plot to destroy our borders altogether, while ushering in a sick form of digital ID to trick the native population into giving in to a future social credit scheme. Indeed, on learning Starmer may move the illegal migrants to military barracks, Paul Weston wrote, "Makes perfect sense. Cut the British Army and use the empty barracks to garrison imported men of fighting age and anti-Western ideology. If you still cannot see what is happening here, I cannot help you." And then we come to Mahmood herself, a woman who has been wrongly trumpeted in the MSM as someone who will be tough on borders, when her past has proven she is an anti-British, anti-white extremist who hates our beautiful flag.
You know, the people that you see holding the English flag most of the time, down my neck of the woods, will be the EDL, and they are white and they are male and they're bad people and they want to divide our community.
So if you are carrying the English flag, according to Mahmood, you are a white male racist. Then can we move to 2014? She personally took part in a protest at a Sainsbury's in Birmingham, lying down on the shop floor to demand they stop selling Israeli goods. I would say that's not a Home Secretary focused on securing Britain. That's an activist aligning herself with the most extreme pro-Palestinian voices.
I'm just here, it's Saturday afternoon at a peaceful protest outside of a Sainsbury's store here in central Birmingham, and it's 3:30 and the store has actually just shut as a result of the peaceful protest. That's about 4.5 hours worth of business that Sainsbury's is losing for supporting goods from the Israeli settlements which are illegal under international law. So we're calling on Sainsbury's and all other stores trade settlement goods that they stop doing so that they do not support people who have broken international law. There is huge response today just here in central Birmingham. It's incredible to see, and the passion here of all of the people campaigning is incredible to see.
As Eyal Yacobi put it after sharing that video, she is in charge of immigration, visas and borders. Here she is at a rally calling for a globalise the intifada. Rest in peace, UK. That prompted the US Senator Ted Cruz to post in horror, what? But it actually gets worse. As Chris Rose explained, Mahmood previously displayed her joy when one of her constituents had been taken off a flight deporting foreign criminals. He says, actions speak louder than words, and I have no reason to trust this woman. Watch.
Shabana Mahmood, one of your constituents was due to be on the flight. Do you know if they were on the flight?
My office has received confirmation this morning that he was not on the flight. He was taken off, so he has not been deported this morning.
And what was his situation?
His situation was that he actually served in the British Armed Forces, and he did 2 tours of Afghanistan. When he came back from Afghanistan, he suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and that sort of began the deterioration of his mental health, after which he was convicted for GBH. His mental health has continued to deteriorate, and his argument has always been, he's served this country, he hasn't had help for the PTSD that he picked up as a serving soldier for our country. So it really goes to the heart of our notions of what it is to be a citizen, what it is to serve, what we should be doing for people who have served in our armed forces, who haven't had the help they need with their mental health, which of course then is not a shock that things descend into the sorts of situation that my constituent has faced.
And then let's go to 2019, where Mahmood was outside the Indian High Commission in London protesting India's decision on Kashmir. She described it as India-occupied Kashmir and called New Delhi's actions a betrayal. So that is a UK politician now in charge of our borders taking up the language of Pakistan's foreign policy. Then in October 2023, and remember this was just days after the barbaric Hamas attacks on Israel, she issued a statement. And sure, she condemned Hamas, but in the same breath, she pivoted straight back to her long-standing obsession, Palestinian statehood, once again unable to separate Britain's national interest from her ideological activism. Mahmood lives next door to her parents in Birmingham. She has previously said that being a Muslim is, quote, the centre point of my life, and said it, quote, drives me in the way that I live my life and see my life. She has consistently warned Labour's leadership against alienating Muslim communities over Gaza instead of standing firm against extremism or illegal migration. So a Home Secretary whose first loyalty doesn't look like it's to Britain, but to Gaza, to Pakistan, to divisive causes abroad. This is Slippery Starmer's most dangerous appointment yet. And it isn't just about politics. It's about whether Britain's borders, safety, and law and order are in the hands of someone truly committed to this country. I would argue that Mahmood's records tell us all we need to know. There's certainly no way she would have the balls or desire to ban the Muslim Brotherhood, for example, which Nigel Farage pledged to do at the Reform UK conference at the weekend.
And we will stop dangerous organisations with links to terrorism operating in our country. Quite why we've been so gutless about this, both Conservative and Labour, I don't know. All across the Middle East, countries have banned and prescribed the Muslim Brotherhood as a dangerous organisation. We will do the very same.
Now, that even received the backing from former senior Tory Nadeem Zahawi, who himself is Iraq-born. He wrote a demonstration by Reform that they have thought through and understood the danger and threat to British society and security from the most dangerous terrorist Islamists movement on earth. Every brand of terrorism in and from the Middle East, from Al-Qaeda, ISIS to Hamas, had its founders from the Muslim Brotherhood, one of the big decisions that will help protect the UK's future. But Mahmood, by contrast, is a politician with a long record of being soft on borders, soft on extremism, soft on national security, and now Slippery Starmer has handed her the keys to the Home Office. What message does that send to Brits, to families watching their towns change beyond recognition thanks to illegal migration? To those who want strong policing, real justice, to a nation that has already suffered time and again at the hands of Islamist terror. Instead of picking someone tough, someone serious, someone who believes in Britain, Starmer has put a woman who spent her career undermining every attempt to secure our borders. So make no mistake, Shabana Mahmood's appointment is not just a bad choice, it is a dangerous one. It puts Britain at risk and it tells you everything you need to know about the weakness, the cowardice and the betrayal at the very heart of this Labour government. But of course, all the MSM seems to want to talk about is her goddamn sex.
Now, David Lammy was appointed Deputy Prime Minister and moved into a new role as Justice Secretary after serving as Britain's top diplomat, the Foreign Secretary over the last year. Shabana Mahmood, formerly the Justice Secretary then, is the new Home Secretary. There she is posing for photographs outside the Home Office. Yvette Cooper, of course, has moved from her brief in that building at the Home Office to take over Mr. Lammy's former job as Foreign Secretary. And with Rachel Reeves staying in post as Chancellor, the appointment of Miss Mahmood and Miss Cooper to their new roles means that for the first time in history, the three so-called great offices of state are all filled by women.
Who cares? Seriously, Sly News. Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister in 1979. Enough with your ridiculous identity politics. Watch Katie Hopkins' response.
Keir Starmer has decided to make as his Home Secretary a lady by the name of Shabana Mahmood. And, you know, nothing says Britain, nothing says home to me quite like the name Shabana Mahmood. She's going to be in charge of letting in the rubber dinghy massive in through the coastline of Kent and other places. Her first policy seems to be that we should in fact have inflatable donuts so that the illegals can come over and have a bit of a laugh at the same time. She also says that the most important thing in her life is Islam, and she will be in charge of the grooming gang, the rape gang's inquiries. She is a Pakistani Muslim lady, which is delightful, but putting her in charge of the rape gang inquiry does seem a bit like marking your own homework.
And our guest today, the black belt barrister Daniel ShenSmith, believes the Home Office no longer safeguards our nation after the recent Epping decision. Watch.
People who were fighting against it are now in government, not just in government, but Shabana Mahmood in the Home Office. As I posted on X, she would have my full support if she does indeed act for the people of the UK, the best interests of the UK and British citizens and so on, and actually seek to remove foreign criminals and to prevent the influx of illegal migration, which is going to create significant risk in this country. And as I remind everybody, every time I say this, it is nothing at all to do with race or religion, and it is nothing at all to do with those who specifically need to flee war and absolutely need protection. From a humanitarian standpoint, that is obviously something we should be doing as a nation. Many of you disagree with that and think that it's not our problem and it's not our business, and that's your view to hold as well. And I just think that if it turns out that there is a significant risk of harm and crime to the UK and the people of the UK, they absolutely need to stand on this and do something about it. But there it is. History tells a very compelling picture. People who are now in government have actively sought to prevent the removal of people that went on to murder people in this country. That is very genuinely, factually, the situation that we are in now. These people are in government.
And then we get to the chaos at the heart of government itself. Yet in this sort of parallel universe, the MSM continue their shocking government because they can't admit they got it all wrong. They got it spectacularly wrong when it came to slippery Starmer. Like Anna Soubry, who wrote, "Is it just me? But suddenly everything feels normal. No more psychodramas and scandals. Like the grown-ups are back in government and people can get on with their lives watching politics out of their corner of their eyes. Safe." And I have to say, the reaction to Angela Red Rayner's departure from government over tax evasion has been funereal from the likes of Sly News, who have lamented her loss as if she has been murdered rather than forced out because of her own shocking behaviour. As Ross Kempsell put it, can you imagine a Conservative Deputy Prime Minister who had left school at 16 with zero qualifications and resigned in a tax scandal being treated like this? They'd be pilloried in the media for days, not laurelled with fatuous broadcast obituaries as though they'd died. And his outfit, Guido Fawkes, summed up the way Britain has been lied to over this government by the regime media.
My God.
Angela Rayner, Deputy Prime Minister, how does that feel? How does that feel, Deputy Prime Minister? Can I just say, if I may, I've never seen a Deputy Prime Minister with the phone strap. I mean, that sort of signifies to me a new era, right? It's just a different type of politician in number 10, so...
And suddenly, for once, for the first time in many of our lives, actually Britain looks like a little haven of peace and stability.
A Chancellor crying at Prime Minister's questions.
I'm not going to pretend the last few days have been easy. They've been tough.
It's very hard to see how the government can proceed as planned.
It has been economically and politically an utter shambles.
We've got yet another screeching U-turn on benefits after the screeching U-turn on the winter fuel, a screeching U-turn on grooming gangs.
The government has formally rowed back on planned cuts to some benefits.
In terms of mistakes, look, I think that we haven't always told our story as well as we should, explain our decisions in a way that might, in retrospect, have been better, but that's the nature of politics.
Have you lost control of your MPs, Prime Minister?
Now, Daniel ShenSmith, the Black Belt Barrister, is here. Daniel, so good to have you on Outspoken for the first time.
How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. And it has been, wow, an insane weekend. But I want to start with Shabana Mahmood because I watched your video on Saturday and I thought there are so many questions about this woman and her priorities. And as you say, you focused yours very much not looking at her race, not looking at her religion, but just looking at her political decisions.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing really frustrates me is when people bring in race, religion, background, everything else, and even political leanings. They'll call people right wing, whatever. It really irritates me because I mean, one can hold all sorts of views, left wing, right wing, whatever. That shouldn't define somebody any more than race and religion should. But past behavior is a good indicator of future behavior, and so, as I often say, I try to stay neutral in my videos. Some people think I don't, but I do try to. I try to give both sides of the picture. I try to give both arguments. And even if my own views are obvious to some, I will still try to give those views. And so when you give both arguments and you give an academic, if you like, analysis of what's going on, what the person's done before, what their political leanings are, everything else falls away. Their background with... Angela Rayner's background, working class, etc. Everything gets brought up for discussion. And I think it's not necessary because actually, when you look at what they actually do, such as preventing the deportation of foreign criminals and ostensibly not acting in the nation's best interests, those behaviors are the best predictors of future behavior. And you said a few things in your summing up, Dan, where the public perception, I think, is really important. And at the moment, I think we have a public perception where we have members of government who certainly say many things and don't appear to do the same thing. So, for example, Shabana Mahmood was asked, does she agree with Keir Starmer on the stance on immigration and stopping small boats, etc.? And she said, of course, she agrees. But I think most people would not take the view that he is taking that seriously because it isn't stopping. And on her first day, over 1,000 more migrants have crossed the Channel after a week of bad weather resulting in zero crossings. So that is my view. You have to look at the behavior here. And as you used in my video snippet there, she would have my full support if indeed she does act in the best interests of the UK and really does prove that she is going to take these tangible steps. But I wait with bated breath.
Well, you look at her previous passions, Daniel. Her previous passions have been Pakistani foreign policy and Palestinian foreign policy. And indeed, it only seemed to be once she entered government or entered cabinet that she actually realized, oh my goodness, maybe I've got to start talking about the English people, English interests. But then you listen to her view on the flag. And, you know, the flag has almost ludicrously become almost like a lightning rod, because how on earth can you say with a straight face that flying the national flag of England, as she literally did, makes you some type of EDL member, and of course, white and straight and male. I don't think she said straight, actually, but she said white and male. And she said it in a derogatory way.
The hint for me there is the subtle clues of body language, which you can't hide. It doesn't matter what your experience. If something strikes you to the core, unless you're some sort of psychopath that doesn't have these things, then they do show. And in that segment you played, where she's talking about EDL and flying the flag, she laughed as she said, and of course they're white, or whatever the wording she said. And it does show, to me, in my opinion, what she thinks. And now again, we have this sort of extremist comparison where there are, of course, extremists who will fly the flag with nefarious intent, and they will demonstrate in extremist ways. Now, we're not defending those any more than we defend extreme lefties, but to fly the flag generally, to support the flag generally, is absolutely not an extremist thing. It's absolutely not. It's not even a right-wing thing. I mean, this is. It sort of becomes synonymous with many politicians now as a right-wing thing to fly the flag or support flying the flag, until, of course, it appears to me that Keir Starmer realized that was the public desire to have pride in the flag. And then, of course, he said, well, of course, we've got them as well. And it just feels disingenuous.
Yeah, I mean, he's a total fake. He's a total fake. And what we have to remember is we have a government that does hate our flag, quite literally. I mean, you know, one of the contenders to become deputy leader of the Labour Party appears to be Emily Thornberry. What is Emily Thornberry most famous for, Daniel? This tweet where she posted what seems to me to be actually a lovely house, you know, a house that you should be proud to own, with people flying the St. George's flag out the front. It was during a by-election campaign. And she posted just 3 words with it, image from #Rochester, but we knew what she was saying. And she now might be the next deputy leader of the Labour Party. These people hate our flags. They hate our traditions. I've got to ask you too about David Lammy becoming deputy prime minister, because there's been outrage over this over the course of the weekend too. I mean, remember, this is the guy who literally, and he stood by it, never backed away from it, actually doubled down on it, literally compared Brexiteers to Nazis, described Donald Trump as if he was a member of the KKK. Well, Ant Middleton, who's becoming increasingly political, going to run for the mayor of London, posted after his appointment, no one voted for this, stand down with immediate effect. This is not democracy. This is an attack on British culture, heritage and identity. We must not allow this to happen. What do you make of the appointment of Lammy as Deputy Prime Minister?
I have to be blunt here. I couldn't believe it. I mean, more than that. We were discussing the shuffle around and the rearrangement of the chairs, so to speak. And we joked that he might move in to be deputy PM. And within 2 minutes, it was announced. And for once in my life, I was genuinely speechless. I really couldn't believe it. I didn't know what to say. I don't really know what to say now, other than I just don't think it's appropriate with the amount of things that he said. I mean, people love or hate the United States, for example. But if one thing is true, we should absolutely be standing shoulder to shoulder with the United States for many, many reasons, whether you like them or not. And with his past comments, particularly with Donald Trump, and the same arguments goes to Donald Trump, whether you love him or hate him, again, it's in our nation's interests to get along with the United States and therefore Donald Trump. And so with the comments that he's made and the hypocrisy that he's displayed and everything else, without being too rude about it, all of the clips that show that, in my view, he's just not up to this role.
He's stupid. I mean, he's stupid. He is actually stupid. I mean, obviously there was the Mastermind appearance, but there was also the fact that he genuinely believes, because he is so infiltrated by extreme trans ideology, he genuinely believes that a man can grow a cervix. Here's a reminder of that.
It's transphobic, but it's not accurate, Nick. I mean, obviously, it's probably the case that only that trans women don't have ovaries, but a cervix, I understand, is something that you can have following various procedures and hormone treatment and all the rest of it.
Well, I mean, of course, that's ludicrous, but he's our Deputy Prime Minister.
Yeah, it beggars belief. I mean, people can have these views, they can identify however they wish, and we can treat them with respect. It's very different to actually holding these sort of views and just not being at one with reality. And that is a fact. And now slowly the courts are catching up. And it's taken a Supreme Court ruling to say that biology and sex, define man and women. It's absolutely ludicrous that it's taken a Supreme Court ruling to do that. And even more ludicrous that all of the organizations are taking time and even fighting against it and saying they're waiting for guidance to change their policies. But the law is the law. The judgment was clear. But to have David Lammy, who doesn't seem to be at one with reality, Deputy PM, which means, and just to bring this home for everybody watching, if anything happened with Keir Starmer, if he's out of the country or is just incapacitated anyway whatsoever, David Lammy is in charge. And let that sink in. I couldn't believe it. So,
it's terrifying.
Yeah, I have no idea.
And as Ant Middleton says, no one voted for this. Of course, the British regime media, the corrupt British regime media, the corrupt British mainstream media want to pivot. And we see what they do. So even though Angela Red Rayner, has had to go as Deputy Prime Minister because she is a proven champagne socialist chancer tax cheat, the mainstream media want to pivot the story to their favourite habit in the world, Nigel Farage bashing. And we've seen it all weekend long over his perfectly legal tax arrangements, which prompted an extraordinary chase down between a Sly News reporter and Farage at the Labour Party conference, which did, though, end up resulting in one major revelation. Farage has confirmed that he will leave his post as host on GB News at least once he is Prime Minister. Watch.
Nigel, your party is about professionalisation. Do you think you've done that, this conference?
I think massive steps forward. I mean, just have a look at everything, have a look at the stage set, have a look at the way it's all gone. Hello, lovely to see you. How are you?
See you. Well done.
Yeah, no, I think we're moving on very rapidly. I genuinely do.
You made a big deal about Angela yesterday and her tax affairs.
I didn't. I made a very small deal of it compared to everybody else.
But there are rumours that you're using a private company for your own tax affairs to pay less on your GB News earnings. Is that true?
I have massive outgoings. I employ contractors. I have a business that does a variety of things, many things.
But are you using that to pay less tax?
No, I'm using it legitimately because I run a company that has overheads. I know very few people in the media have ever been in business, and therefore I doubt would understand it.
But you are paying less tax than you would if you didn't use that company, aren't you?
And there'd be fewer people employed if I didn't have a company.
So it's fine to pay less tax?
It's good to employ people. Do you understand that? Or not? Maybe not.
And what about if you want to be Prime Minister? Would you quit your GB show in order to do that?
Oh, I think doing both would be quite tricky.
So he said there, I think doing both would be quite tricky. Now, I find this entire situation fascinating and extraordinary because there is absolutely a desire in the mainstream media to destroy Nigel Farage because of his business interests. They don't want him earning any money. He is becoming increasingly bombastic in terms of his defense. Why do I need to be at PMQs when I don't get to ask any questions? I was speaking to someone very senior at the weekend who knows a lot about parliamentary processes, who said it is insane that Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House, does not grant Reform UK a question at every PMQs. However, I do think where there are questions, of course, is over Farage's role at GB News, because GB News claims to be an independent insurgent force. But more and more over the weekend, I saw it morphing into effectively the propaganda arm of Reform UK. That, to me, does leave me uncomfortable. But you will see Farage's much bolder approach when Laura Kuenssberg also tried to hammer him on his tax and business arrangements on the British Bashing Corporation. Watch.
You said, though, yesterday you can't get away with being Housing Secretary and avoiding £40,000 of tax.
No.
But you want to be Prime Minister, and your own tax and business affairs aren't exactly straightforward. Your home and your...
I'm very sorry. I take objection to the very premise of that question.
Well, I'm going to just ask you about it, because I know that you believe and you say you want to be transparent and open. So your constituency home, where you stay in Clacton, is owned by your partner, I believe. And you have a separate company for your earnings outside being an MP. I just wonder, right, I'm not suggesting anything...
well, number one, they're two separate questions. The fact that she's bought a house, I mean, why not?
I'm not suggesting there's anything improper. My question is that you, like many other politicians, have affairs where there's a lot of money swilling around and that are not very like the financial arrangements of most people. Do you think that you can relate to people watching this interview?
I have been for 30 years, in my own way, an entrepreneur. I've run companies for 30 years. I've employed lots of people directly. I've employed loads of people as contractors. As it happens, I still employ quite a few people as contractors. I have a company that does a variety of things. Media income is just one of them. And you know what? Do we want people in politics who have paid tax, lots of tax, who've created lots of jobs, or not?
Would you commit to publish your tax returns as you proceed on your journey that Hope will be getting to number 10?
All my company returns, of course, are filed every year at Companies House and there for all to see.
What about your own personal tax return?
I haven't published my own personal tax returns. I personally think that's an intrusion too far. I don't believe it's necessary.
So that's not something you would do on your journey to what you hope would take you to number 10?
At the moment, I'm not inclined at the moment to do that.
And the reality is they hate Farage because he makes money, because he's successful. And just like there's a two-tier media, there's also total two-tier policing when it comes to Reform UK. We saw it all weekend. This from Adam Brooks, who wrote, "Lefties threatening death to Reform supporters." Look at that. The actual banner says death to the racist flag shaggers. And Adam quite rightly said, if I posted that on socials, I'd be arrested by stormtroopers. Fact. And I think he is correct. But where Nigel is brilliant is he always just turns this constant criticism, this constant desire to disrupt into a positive, as he did when hecklers destroyed or tried to destroy, they certainly didn't manage to destroy, tried to disrupt his second speech at conference. Watch.
Set up the party and just ignore them. Just ignore them. Boring, boring, boring. Well, I don't know. She looked like she'd been on the sauce all afternoon. I don't know.
And that is Nigel at his best. Where there is real division in Reform UK after this weekend's conference, though, is over the Tory invasion of the party and what it means. That, of course, follows Nadine Dorries being announced as the new defector just before the conference launched. and she caused consternation amongst loyal reformists and Faragists at the weekend by suggesting that Farage must join forces with Boris Johnson in order to save the country. Now, I want to show you two different reactions from the two different camps within Reform. Nigel Farage, who is very clear that there will be more Tory defections. I was speaking to another senior Tory over the past few days who is saying, yep, I'm considering going, so are many others. And Farage made clear that even though Boris might be one step too far, he does need more of these Tories. Watch.
You've been drawing across some pretty well-known Conservative figures. Nadine Dorries, the latest of them, former Cabinet Minister and someone who's close to Boris Johnson. I just wonder, do you fancy your chances of getting him across? Have you had any conversations with him?
I don't think that would really work somehow. I don't.
Why not?
Oh, I think that the Boris wave, and I like him personally, I always have done. He's a very entertaining bloke, but I think that the Boris wave was felt by millions of people.
Legal migration to this country.
Yeah, millions of people being allowed into Britain, most of whom, by the way, don't even work and are costing us a fortune. That's something for which this audience will never, ever forgive him. Nadine was a Brexiteer, of course, herself, and she brings us the one commodity we're very short of, and that's experience at government level. That is our biggest weakness. You can ask me lots of questions about policy and personnel and all the rest of it. But if you ask me, how are you going to do this? I can't really give you an answer because I haven't got anybody in the senior team that's ever been there before. Nadine came yesterday, she's the first, and there will be others.
Isn't it a bit rich, though, because you're criticising this government, saying nobody's qualified to do it, and you're saying, I don't have people who are qualified to do it.
As of yesterday, I started to get more qualified to do it, and that process will continue.
So we should look out for more former ministers coming to join you?
Oh, yes.
But that is going to cause another civil war within Reform UK, in part because those early defectors, like Zia Youssef, the party's new head of policy, a bloke who I do not trust as far as I can throw, because remember, he remained a Conservative until he was suspended from the party after the last election, but he is far more anti any other senior Tories joining because he wants and plans to be the next leader. He intends to succeed Nigel Farage as Prime Minister. He intends to become the first Muslim Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. So he took a totally different tone to his leader, Nigel Farage, at the weekend, posting Boris Johnson was one of the worst PMs in history. He will never be welcome in Reform. And then this is what went down in his Sly News interview.
We certainly would not welcome Boris Johnson. No, that's never going to happen. And, in terms of the Reform Party, the Reform leadership, look, the reality is we are a group of people who are patriots. We share values. We want secure borders. We want to restore sovereignty. We want mass deportations. We want serious law and order. We need more prisons. We need to send people into prisons. If you share those values, then you're welcome in our party. But, brother, I want to say
Are you saying Boris Johnson doesn't share those values?
Of course not. He threw open our borders. The Boris wave, which was millions and millions of non-EU migrants flooding into the country post-Brexit, betraying every single person who voted Brexit, betraying every single person who gave him an 80-seat majority. Frankly, he was one of the worst prime ministers in British history.
Daniel ShenSmith, the black belt barrister, also an advisor to Rupert Lowe's Restore Britain, back with me now. Daniel, what did you make of this split within Reform UK over the weekend when it comes to Farage saying, no, we need the Tory defectors because we just have no experience. We've had no one that's in government, compared to the other camp who say, hell no. Why on earth do we want these failed Tories who destroyed the country in our party?
I think it's a sensible approach from him. I mean, when he says they need the experience, that is only a sensible thing to say. I mean, you're right in what you said earlier. They hate him and they hate everything he stands for because he is a genuine threat. He and his party, Reform, are a genuine threat because he is successful in business. He is successful in media. He's obviously successful in setting up this party, which is giving them a real run. And everything that he does and stands for is a threat to them. I think in current government, by contrast, I think almost no one, if no one at all, has any experience in business or anything else. So for Nigel to say, yes, we need to recruit experience in government at government level, that's a sensible thing to do. As a business person, if you don't know how to do something, you employ somebody to do it. You find the expertise to do it. You can't be, as I suppose I'm an entrepreneur myself. I've never worked for any other company by my own. I've always run my own businesses. I've not always been a barrister, always been in business, done lots of different things. If I don't know how to do something, I'll go and find someone to do it. We've built websites. I've gone to find a programmer who will be able to do that. So for Nigel to say that, it's a sensible thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. I actually agree with all of that. Where I do have a slight issue is with the GB News thing, because what we are seeing, Daniel, increasingly, and of course you're an advisor to Restore Britain, right? I think Rupert Lowe has a very important role to play on the right of British politics, and his treatment by Reform UK, and I stand by this, I can't just move on. It was abhorrent, it was appalling for a party that claims to be about free speech, weaponizing the police to try and jail one of its MPs, given there's a personal feud between himself and Zia Youssef, like that whole thing, like I'm still not over it, okay? That doesn't mean I won't give fair coverage to Reform UK, but it was a terrible, terrible moment for the party, which I think in a lot of ways they've never actually properly addressed and reconciled what they did. But my issue, and why I don't have such a problem with Farage being questioned about GB News, is GB News is increasingly now becoming a propaganda network for Reform UK rather than an independent source on the right, which is what I believed it was going to be. Obviously, when I was a launch presenter, the political situation was very different back then. And I think there are problems when we see Rupert Lowe being banned, Restore Britain being banned, Ben Habib being banned. Like, does GB News really just want to be the Reform UK channel now, especially given that revelation today? And I know some people will say, well, it's obvious that when Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister, note I say when, not if, when Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister, he's going to leave GB News. Well, GB News has to be careful, because what happens then?
Absolutely. And you're right to say that. I think much, much earlier in Reform's progression and growth, I think it's obviously less of a problem. And he was challenged on it before, and he said, well, I can do both. He said he can sit around and he can talk on GB News, then he can go and do his thing. That's fine. But I think as Reform has grown and as it becomes more inevitable what's going to happen in the next few years, if not before the next Parliament is up, but whilst that is now becoming inevitable, I think you're right that there does have to be a disconnect if GB News wants to stand alone and an independent right presenter. So yeah, I'd agree with you on that, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, to pretend that Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib, Tommy Robinson and Elon Musk are not serious players on the right of British politics is naive at best, reckless and dishonest at worst. The left is up in arms over Lucy Connolly's appearance at the Reform UK conference. Now, again, I find this just totally pathetic that their answer, the left's answer to trying to combat the surging popularity of Reform UK and Nigel Farage is to target the people connected to the party, target the people speaking at their conference with the suggestion that they should be deplatformed. Indeed, isn't it always the suggestion of the left when they're in trouble? Silence, cancel, censor. I'm sick of it. You will know that I have followed Lucy Connolly's story from the beginning. I have been there from the start when the mainstream media, including GB News and the Daily Mail and Talk TV, were trying to deride this woman as some type of racist. Now, quite rightly, thanks to the work here on Outspoken and my friend Alison Pearson pushing her story into the stratosphere in the mainstream media via the Daily Telegraph, she is quite rightly seen by sane people in Britain as the face of two-tier policing, as the face of a government that wants to censor people for speech, just like we've seen with Gary Linehan over the weekend. And there was an extraordinary moment during this session at the Reform UK conference at the weekend in discussion with Alison Pearson and Liam Halligan of the Planet Normal podcast, where Lucy Connolly revealed that one of the photos of her daughter Edie was censored in prison simply because she was holding the Union Jack flag. Watch.
Edie was selected to represent our country at the World Junior Championships. Amazing. And about a month ago, she went to the World Junior Championships, and Proud Dad was there taking pictures. All the girls were posing with their national flags, Australia, Germany, America, and Edie, of course, representing our country. And Ray sent to Lucy in prison pictures of their daughter and all the other girls with their national flags. And Lucy got in touch with Ray and said, hang on, there's 5 photos you've sent me that have been censored. Which child with a flag were you not allowed to see, Lucy?
My own. Because she was, I didn't know why at the time, so I rang Ray and I said, oh, these photos you sent me, you know, I assumed that maybe she was in a bikini or something like that, because you can understand why they wouldn't put, you know, let you have those on your wall or whatever. He said, no, they were all Edie just playing golf and the plants in the garden and stuff. And he said, oh, maybe it was because of the flag. I was like, no. Anyway, when I got out of prison and I got my stored prop, there was the photos with Edie draped in the flag with all the different country flags and the other children, but I wasn't allowed it.
That is Orwellian bureaucracy.
It's madness.
That is really nasty.
So,
you can't even see a photo of your own kid representing her country holding her national flag.
No, apparently not.
That's a disgrace.
And what's so interesting about Lucy Connolly's new role within Reform UK, even though it's unofficial at this point, is that she wants to deal with the issue of prison reform in quite a fascinating way, because she obviously doesn't believe that she should have been in prison, but she also doesn't believe that the Labour councillor, Ricky Jones, should have gone to prison either. There were lots of people in jail who Lucy Connolly doesn't want to be in prison. So she wants to have an actual debate about this. And given we do have a prison shortage, a crisis in terms of our lack of cell spaces at the moment, perhaps she's someone we should listen to, given she has experience. But not according to Dan Hodges. Not according to Dan Hodges, the mainstream media gatekeeper of the Mail on Sunday, who just raged about the fact that not only Lucy Connolly was platformed, but also Aseem Malhotra, an old friend of mine who has been incredible over the COVID period, now has lots of issues with the vaccine, and suggested on stage that some members of the royal family may have been diagnosed with cancer as a result of the COVID jab. Well, Dan Hodges posted in regards to both of these two people. Reform Conference was very well managed. There was an energy and a buzz surrounding the whole event. But the decision to close the conference with Lucy Connolly and a mad US anti-vaxxer shows they still have a significant way to go before locking in mainstream public opinion. Well, Liam Halligan of the Daily Telegraph's Planet Normal, who hosted that interview with Lucy Connolly, shot back. He posted, Dan, I considered you a friend. And I go, way back. You and I go way back. But I'm concerned that you have casually dissed a media event I am involved with as bonkers. Did you listen to Lucy Connolly's interview today with myself and Alison Pearson? Have you clocked that Lucy Connolly lost her son aged 19 months and gets seriously alarmed when kids are subjected to harm, as she was in the aftermath of the Southport massacre? Have you understood that the police distorted the evidence of Lucy's testimony to paint her as a racist, something the police acknowledged when they were forced to resubmit the record of her testimony? Lucy has explained in more than one interview that she pleaded guilty because she was given duff legal advice, that by doing so she would be home by Christmas, and as a bereaved mum, that was her overwhelming priority. Accuse me of bad faith. Accuse Alison Pearson if you must. But you were 100% wrong to question the motives and integrity of a grieving mum who made a mistake, to which she has freely admitted, as she did again today, and who was absolutely desperate to get back to her traumatized surviving child. But Dan Hodges replied, to be honest, I still can't actually believe you opted to provide a platform for a self-confessed racist criminal on the stage of a major party conference. But Liam wasn't done. He tried again. You haven't engaged with any of the points I made about the specifics of the case. I am a serious journalist. I consider you to be the same. Engage, FFS. But all Dan Hodges would say was, quote, I am a serious journalist and I think you might want to reflect on what you did today. Alison Pearson then had a go, writing to Dan Hodges, just stop it, Dan. On the day of Lucy's sentencing, an African dad of a little girl Lucy looked after had his visa hearing. Lucy filled in his application. She had so many testimonials from non-white parents she adored. Lucy is not a racist. She was railroaded into saying she was the opposite of who she is. The police who altered her statement are now under investigation. Dan Hodges hit back again. No, I won't stop at Alison. She was accused of a racially aggravated offence. She admitted to the offence. She went to jail for the offence. Your attempt to absolve her by citing a series of meaningless anecdotes is irrelevant. To which Alison replied, seriously? The justice system was traduced to make an example of a good person. Police twisted her statement. Child abusers and Labour MPs who punch and kick constituents get lower sentences, and evidence of good character is not meaningless anecdotes. So, perfect guest for this subject, Daniel ShenSmith, the black belt barrister. So, Daniel, this is fascinating on so many levels, right? Because surely even though Lucy Connolly pleaded guilty, and of course, in my interview with her here on Outspoken, she said she highly regretted that. She is now taking legal action against the police, who, remember, admitted that the statement that they released was skewed. She had not expressed racist views in her interview. She had expressed views that the vast majority of the country share, that illegal immigrants should not be allowed to come to this country undocumented and that we should have some type of idea who they are. But the fact is, she has been released now. We don't see this type of snobbery around Jeffrey Archer, for example, when he is talking about his time in prison. At the end of the day, I believe she had a right to be on that stage, and I don't believe Reform UK should be pilloried for it. Am I wrong?
There's three things here, and I'll answer that one first, so in reverse order. It's absolutely right that she's on that stage because she has a story to tell and she has her side to put across. So regardless of what happened, she's entitled to be there. They are entitled to give her a platform, and that is the very nature of free speech. Now, there's two other things, important things here. One which underpins everything, and it underpins the protests, it underpins national policies. One cannot and must not fall into the trap of conflating views on immigration with racism. I make every effort to make clear that these things are not at all to do with race or religion. If somebody firmly makes those views, then they might be extremist and that might be wrong. But to have a view on immigration, to curb illegal migration and so on, those views are not automatically racist. And I think they were chalked up to be for Lucy Connolly. The third thing is, we often have a discussion around guilty, not guilty, these kind of things. Now, there is a point of principle here. Being found not guilty after a trial doesn't mean you didn't do it or they didn't do it. It's not the same as innocent. They just weren't found guilty because the evidence wasn't sufficient to reach the standard required. Now, I think there's an interesting point here with Lucy Connolly's case because she touches on duff legal advice. Now, one of the really rare points of appeal is that your legal advice to plead guilty was so bad that you could have a point of appeal against your conviction, and therefore, I mean, you need the court's permission to change your plea. I don't know if that was explored at all, probably not because of the time frames and so on, but it is a rare point of appeal. Now, I would put this in people's mind to consider. Whilst not guilty finding in court is not the same as innocent, it's not the same as they didn't do it, it's just it wasn't good enough. How about this? Someone who has pleaded guilty because we've had speeches from Keir Starmer accusing everybody of being a criminal that was involved, and therefore they will be arrested, they will be held on remand, they will go to prison, etc. All of these things, and with the political feeling across the country at the time, and doubtless the advice that she was given that she felt railroaded into pleading guilty, pleading guilty is not necessarily the same as being guilty for that.
Exactly.
That is a stretch. So many people I've read are saying, well, she's guilty. She did this because she pleaded guilty. That's not necessarily true.
Exactly. And Dan Hodges saying, because she pleaded guilty, she's admitting to being a racist. Not at all.
Exactly.
Indeed, in the first police interview, Daniel, she makes it abundantly clear that she is not a racist. In all of her character witnesses that were presented to the judge in this desperate bid for her not to go to jail, made it abundantly clear that she was not a racist. So she knew that she shouldn't have posted the tweet, but it absolutely was not acknowledging being racist. It was interesting. Mark Dolan on Talk TV really was going for Lucy Connolly in an interview with Sarah Pochin, the Reform UK MP, but she's interesting, of course, because she's a magistrate, or a former magistrate. So she really has an idea about the criminal justice system. But I thought Sarah Pochin actually dealt with it quite well. I'll get your reaction off the back, but just watch this first.
Post on X, she was quite relaxed about the idea of migrant hotels being burnt down. Is that a problem for your party?
Look, I think Lucy Connolly has shown remorse, which is very important. As you know, I was a magistrate for 20 years. It's very important that people understand when they have done something foolish. And I think this is that's the right word for what Lucy did. It was foolish. It was emotion, at the time. And we all obviously felt very strongly about what had happened there in Southport. But yes, you know what? I'll be very much looking forward to talking with Lucy myself. As you know, the whole justice brief is an area that I'm very interested in and knowledgeable about. So I will be very much looking forward to talking to Lucy about her experience inside a women's prison. I've obviously visited a women's prison myself during my career as a magistrate. And so, yes, I'll be very much looking forward to having that conversation with her. And I'm sure that she will have an insight from the front line, if you like, that will be very valuable when it comes to setting policies.
Is she a hero?
I don't think she's a hero. I think what's happened is it's an example of two-tier justice. It's an example, in my view, of where the judiciary has been overtaken by the political establishment. And I feel very strongly that politics and the judiciary should be kept separate. And that is why I resigned as a magistrate to fight the by-election for Reform UK. You cannot mix the two. And without doubt, our judiciary has become politicised. And I think Lucy Connolly, and by the way, I have two men in my constituency, Runcorn residents, who have both suffered in exactly the same way as Lucy Connolly has. One has just been released, another, they've both just been released, one on Thursday of this week, the second one. But, their lives have been turned upside down, victims of injustice.
Now, I actually thought Sarah Pochin's response there was perfect. I mean, Lucy Connolly isn't asking to be viewed as a hero, but I think Sarah is right to say, no, of course we should be looking at her experience and what she thinks on this.
Absolutely. I mean, Lucy has had direct experience of the system in the worst way possible, because it was in the middle of civil unrest / riot, which they don't like to label it as, but in the middle of all that, she posted, bearing in mind her horrific background and personal story, she posted in anger, frustration, many of the feelings that many people across the country, if not most of the people across the country, will have shared. Do I think that she really wanted people to go burn down hotels? No, of course I don't think that. I mean, I think she posted that in pure frustration and anger. Yes, it was foolish. Sarah's views on that, I think, absolutely right. She's not to be heralded as a hero, but it was a foolish thing to say. And I think, obviously, I'm always careful about what I say about judiciary, moving on to that point. But I think a lot of people are justified in thinking that the judiciary is politically influenced. I did a poll on my YouTube channel. I think 40 or 50,000 people voted. I said, with the Epping case, the hotel, I said, do you feel that the Court of Appeal decision was politically influenced? About 98 or 99% said yes, out of 40 or 50,000 people. That tells you what the public opinion is.
Big time. Big time, exactly. There's no doubt about that, is there? Breaking today, Advance UK is going to become an official political party as Ben Habib's insurgent force hit its 30,000 membership target in just 2 months after securing a surprise endorsement from Elon Musk and Tommy Robinson. But despite the fact that this membership increase is truly unprecedented in right-wing British politics, Talk TV and GB News are continuing this ban of both Ben Habib and Advance UK. However, Advance is going all in on the independent media and Musk's platform X, posting Advance UK has done what no other movement has achieved in modern British politics. At 6:39 p.m. on the 6th of September 2025, Advance UK reached 30,000 members in just over 2 months. Application to the Electoral Commission imminent. Advance UK is here to challenge the Uni Party. And Ben Habib made this announcement.
I've known for a long time that a new political force was needed in the United Kingdom. And I was at first reluctant to set up Advance UK. But eventually the pressure became too big. It had to be done for the sake of the nation. But just to check whether I'd got my own assessment right or not, I set ourselves a hurdle of 30,000 members before we apply to the Electoral Commission for registration as a full political party. I thought it would take about 6 months to get to 30,000 members, but actually, remarkably, we've done it in a couple of months. And so I'm really pleased to announce this morning that we have hit that magic 30,000 membership figure, that self-imposed hurdle about which I've just talked. And having reached that figure, we are now, as I mentioned, going to apply to the Electoral Commission to become a political party. And moreover, in order to stand with the British people, with the 30,000 who put their faith in us, and the thousands and thousands more who will put their faith in us in the coming months and years, I'm going to donate £100,000 to the party. We emerge as a new political force, fully registered, fully capitalised, and we're going to take the establishment to task. I'm so touched, so grateful, and so indebted to every single one of you that is signed up as a member of Advance.
But, and there is always a but at the moment when it comes to the right of British politics, Rupert Lowe of Restore Britain isn't getting on the Advance UK train, even though Ben Habib had offered him the leadership of the party. He posted over the weekend, "There is far too much tribalism in today's politics. I find it incredibly boring. There are sensible people in the Tories, Reform, other parties, and from no party at all. I'm even hearing a few Labour MPs talk a bit of sense. That should be encouraged. I see people screaming and abusing them. Why? We need these people on team now. Support them when they do. If nothing changes in 4 years, the country will be in flames by 2029. On this current path, it will almost certainly be irredeemable. We need change now, today. That means working with MPs and others from all political parties. That's exactly what Restore Britain is trying to do. I've enjoyed working with people from different parties. I always have. Just because someone is wearing a certain colour rosette does not mean they are automatically good or bad. The problem is a big number of MPs, and those looking to become MPs need the money and want the fame. It's where this idea of them versus us attitude stems from. Their team must succeed above all. Selfishness, party before country, always. I'll get called a scumbag for even suggesting that there are some decent people in the Conservative Party, but it's true. And I'm very happy to work with anyone to deliver positive change, even Labour MPs. In fact, I was pleased to see a number of Labour politicians engaging with our rape gang inquiry. I want Starmer to succeed in stopping the votes, cutting waiting lists, delivering growth, and whatever else. Annoyingly, he's doing a crap job. We should all want that to change. I don't care if one political party succeeds. I care if the country succeeds. But what was interesting about that is that Ben Habib responded directly, very respectfully, but responded directly. Writing, I applaud Rupert Lowe for the excellent work he and Restore Britain are doing, shining a light on key issues. I do, however, unequivocally believe a new political party is required. We need a mechanism by which change can be delivered, hence Advance UK. I am a member of Restore Britain and will be looking closely at their policies when they emerge. Advance will, where appropriate, factor these into construction of its own policies. I wish Rupert and Restore Britain all the very best. So Daniel ShenSmith, the black belt barrister, you have some skin in this game because you are a member of Restore Britain. You are an advisor for them on legal issues. But what do you make of Ben Habib's argument, especially given the success, by the way? I mean, a lot of people, I remember when Advance Britain set this target, a lot of people just thought it was never going to happen. They were not going to get to 30,000 members. Lots of people suggested that it would take well over 6 months. I mean, they've got there within 2 months. Does this not show, Daniel, that actually there is room on the right of British politics for a truly conservative party that is not Reform UK?
Just to clarify, first of all, I've agreed to assist Restore Britain and advise and so on, pro bono basis, and rather than be called a member, I think it's better to remain independent in that regard.
In your role, absolutely.
Forgive me, but yes, I was quite surprised by Advance UK's progression and the speed of it, and I've got a few thoughts about it. I think that is set against the views, I think, of Rupert Lowe with Restore Britain. He describes it as a campaign, not a party, or a movement, not a party. And I think, well, I fear, is this going to just split everybody but Labour / Conservative? And how far is that going to water down views? I hear a lot of people in support of Advance UK, and I hear a lot of people in support of reform. So it's intriguing to me as to what will happen next, and whether they will take over a chunk of reform members or what will happen. Because ultimately, the way that I think of it is this: when we inevitably get to a new government, then we have the rest of the House of Commons who will obviously vote for or against policies. And I think the biggest frustration for parties historically is having their policies and everything voted down, voted out, stopped, halted, and nothing gets done. And so with Rupert's views of let's put what the people of Britain want first, and we vote on those, and that is what we push forward, I think that's the right approach. We need the right party to be able to do it. So I'm very intrigued as to what will happen between the two. What do you think, Dan?
Well, I think there's time, firstly, but I do think a party has to be part of it. I mean, I guess my concern is, because I love Rupert. You know, everyone knows I love Rupert. I love Restore Britain. I love the people involved with Restore Britain. I think it's really exciting. But at the end of the day, at some point, people have to put a tick in a box, right? And that is how you change the country. And who's Rupert going to stand for at the next election? Because there's a chance that Reform UK will try and wipe him out. So I think at some point there does have to be a political solution. And of course, with all of this, I would like to think that the right can be united in some way. That would obviously include Reform UK, it would include the Conservative Party. But where I do totally agree with Rupert, and where I see my role and the role of Outspoken, and by the way, a lot of Reform UK voters don't like this because they just want me to be a propagandist and they want me to join the club. And, you know, Dan, there's only one choice and we've got one opportunity to save the country and it's got to be Nigel. All I say to them is, if it wasn't for the types of conversations that you are having on Black Belt Barrister and Black Belt Secrets, that I'm having here on Outspoken every day, that Restore Britain are having on X, that Rupert is having on X, there is no way in hell that Reform UK would have announced a mass deportation policy a couple of weeks ago. So I think outside the system, a lot of what people like me can do and people like Rupert can do is move the Overton window. But of course, the difference between Rupert and me is that I'm not an MP. I don't want to be an MP. I don't want to be Prime Minister. You know, he's on the list of preferred Prime Ministers, right? Like, I mean, he's a little bit far down, but I think the latest odds I saw, he was even higher than Boris Johnson. So at some point, you've got to have a political movement as part of that. By the way, I do think it is disgusting, though, that GB News has just not covered the story at all. Richard Taylor, who is a member of the Advance UK sort of senior leadership team, wrote, "Dear GB News, as you're the People channel, will you be mentioning the fact that Advance UK has reached 30,000 members and will now register with the Electoral Commission as a political party?" Well, I checked out their coverage last night, Daniel, not a word, not a word. And again, I have a real problem with this. And again, I know there'll be people saying, Dan, you're bitter and twisted, like, why are you slamming GB News for this? Because I'm sorry, 30,000 members of a new insurgent political party with the backing of Elon Musk within 2 months is massive. When Nigel Farage went out to meet Elon Musk with Nick Candy, do you remember that? It was in January at Mar-a-Lago. GB News went wall to wall. There was rolling coverage. So to just pretend that Advance UK and Ben Habib, who, by the way, was one of the most popular guests on GB News. The audience loved him. He would appear every week, at least with Michelle Dewberry and on other shows.
I remember.
To just pretend it's not happening, this is where I have a problem. Like, I don't pretend Reform UK isn't doing amazing things. I mean, look at the show today. We've discussed the conference. We've discussed the fact that Nigel Farage has made this amazing call to ban the Muslim Brotherhood. You know, it's like, if you are a news channel, if you genuinely claim to be an independent news provider, you just can't ignore something happening. So GB News just pretending that Advance UK isn't happening to try and edit them out of the story, I think it's highly irresponsible, Daniel, to be honest. I really do.
Absolutely. I think that is a genuine criticism. If they want to be independent, and there's all sorts of fights about them being independent as a new company, I think the least that they can do is cover it in the same way. And as you said, Dan, you cover issues on your channel. I cover them on mine. If miraculously Labour were to implement some policy, let's say they were to physically turn the boats back to France today, tomorrow, and actually have that bust up with France, and it'd be 48 hours of legal chaos over international law. But if they did that, they'd have my full support on my channel. I would talk about it. I would say this is a miraculous thing Labour have done, and suddenly it might turn the tides. We would cover it. Would they? I would hope so. So equally, I would have hoped that they would cover Advance UK as well, if they are speaking in the interest of the British people.
Yeah,
I think
and restore Britain. But to be honest, Daniel, like, sometimes on a selfish level, I think, you know what, fine, don't talk about it because we're going to. You know, you're going to on your channel, I will on my channel, and that is the brilliant thing right now. We actually don't need these mainstream media gatekeepers, because the billionaire owners, they do have their own priorities. Just trust me on that. And so if their priority is now to get Reform UK to be elected, well, then of course they're going to cut out people who are not potentially part of that. So, you know, I guess all we can say is we're just going to keep covering the truth. And I love your channel, and it is so brilliant to have you on Outspoken for the first time. That is the Black Belt Barrister who is behind that channel, and also Black Belt Secrets, which is another brilliant channel on YouTube. Daniel ShenSmith, please come back soon. Absolutely loved it today. Thank you so much. And we are moving over to Substack now for the Uncancelled After Show. Prince Harry has now touched down in the United Kingdom, and he has made a shock threat to his brother William, as there's going to be a real head-to-head showdown actually over the last couple of days. So we're going to have all the latest with our Royal Mastermind Angela Levin. So at this stage, we move off YouTube and Rumble, continue the conversation at www.outspoken.live. Remember, if you were just tuning in and you're waiting for the Greatest Britain Union jackass, it was actually James Whale's funeral today, my friend, and that is the reason why we recorded the show a little bit earlier, even though we are putting it out live. So we didn't do a Greatest Britain and Union jackass today. We will do so tomorrow when we will be back live, and on tomorrow's show I'll also talk to you and let you know what happened at James Whale's funeral. I am heading there right now, so don't worry, we are back live tomorrow. 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hit subscribe right now if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble. And most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.